Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about the transit South Node conjunct one's natal Chiron. Now, when we're talking about the transits involving the South Node, it could manifest in what we're going away from. Now, the fact that this is Chiron, it could be in some cases going away from some kind of physical wounds or suffering. If this is in Taurus, say, it could be about some issues with the throat or thyroid or the neck area, especially if it's in the first or sixth house in the chart, because the first house is the physical body. Sixth house is associated with physical health, and also too, it could be about going away from emotional wounds or suffering. This could be, I mean, if it's in Scorpio, say, it could be from dealing with somebody that might have had like some psychological, maybe effect on you to your detriment. It could be maybe you were dealing with somebody that was, could be like maybe a stalker. If it's in Scorpio, it could be too. I mean, you're talking about these are emotional and figurative wounds that one could be leaving behind. And the thing about it too is keep in mind that Chiron is the wounded healer, and it reflects areas where we often are hurt, where we experience very prodigious wounds, whether it's on emotional or physical scale or what have you. But it could also reflect the ways that we're hurt, that where we have trouble helping ourselves, we can help others as well. Now, the thing about this is, given that it's about helping and healing others, it could be a time that we might step away from that to some degree. It might be more about helping ourselves, and maybe that's what really transpires during this time, because it could, again, the South Node energy is about what we're going away from. So it doesn't, I wouldn't say it necessarily means we're 100% would be going away from healing and helping others, but we may take a step back to some degree. It might be more of a focus on ourselves, and also the point that is opposite of this transit of the South Node, which of course is the North Node, and looking at that by sign and house can indicate where we might be focusing as far as being directed toward for that time being. Now, another thing too is this could also, you're talking about Chiron in astrology, that also can be about issues associated with the self-esteem and unworthiness. I mean, again, going back to Taurus, it could be some issues associated with the monetary situation, not having enough money or possessions or resources. It might be trying to go away from those issues. Or say if it's in Gemini, it might be something where we're going away from some inadequacy connected with cerebral ability or versatility, being well-rounded. Uh, this is something to keep in mind. I mean, this could also be about mentoring others. And if you've been somewhat of a mentor to somebody for some time and you're experiencing this transit, it might be a time, for whatever reason, where you don't, it might come to an end because, or at least for maybe one, and if it was one person specifically you were mentoring, it might be a time where this just simply reaches a culmination or a conclusion. Doesn't necessarily mean you would stop this completely, but it might be for like one individual, or maybe something where you just are stopping temporarily for some other reasons. And any kind of suffering that one may be going through. I mean, if this is in Cancer, the zodiac sign Cancer, it could be through some domestic or family situation, or maybe it's just too much introversion. Say if this is in Pisces, it could be attributed to too much isolation, or more matters dealing with drugs or alcohol, or even physical issues like with the feet, the toes, the lymphatic system. This could be a time where it may come to pass. The transits of the South Node are not always necessarily going to be bad, because a lot of times it just reflects energy that we're going away from, and to focus on what the opposite point, which of course is the transit of the North Node. Now, Also, too, Chiron could be about abandonment and people just leaving us kind of, high and dry, leave us out to dry. And if you're having this transit and you've been going through a protracted period of abandonment, of somebody deserting you, leaving you feeling alone and desolate, this could be the time where you have actually outgrown that, so to speak, where you've maybe moved forward and you're not lamenting over this anymore, and it's time to just go, um, and not really worry about this. You might come to a point where it's just not worth it anymore. People have betrayed you and they've left you behind somehow. It's just something where you might come to the point where enough is enough. I'm just going to focus on my future transit north node again. Now, let's say, for example, somebody is having the transit south node making a conjunction to their natal Chiron in Leo in their third house in their natal chart. Now, let's say if it's somebody that's still in their early education, it could be a bullying situation. Leo, I would say, could be associated with bullying in a negative manifestation. It could be some bullying in one's early education, which is the third house, and leaving behind that energy, going away from it. Could be an auspicious period for that to come to an end. Now, another thing about the transit of the South Node hitting Chiron, this could be manifest in some cases as a person from your past that may be coming back that is associated with Chiron. This could be good or bad. It could be a mentor. It could be somebody that might have been an abuser at times. It may be somebody that had abandoned you. It might be a person looking for forgiveness. I mean, say if this is in Pisces, it might be somebody that might have deserted you at one time and looking for some kind of forgiveness at this point in time. Now, and it also might be somebody that was a healer or might have caused some suffering to you and might have impacted your self-esteem and how you felt about yourself to some degree. Now, the thing about this is too. I mean, I want to talk about an example. Somebody that had this transit back in 1993. Now, I forget what her title actually is, or titles, but many of you may have heard of Ronda Rousey. She was like in some mixed martial arts group, and she was involved in some wrestling federation. And she, in her natal chart, she has Chiron in Gemini in her first house of the early childhood. Now, according to Wikipedia.org, until age 6, she had something called apraxia, which is a speech disability or some speech disorder. And interestingly enough, it was on March 17th, I believe March 17th, 1993, she had the transit of the South Node making an exact conjunction to her natal Chiron in Gemini in the first house. And she just had turned 6 years old about like a month and a half prior to that. So it wouldn't surprise me if this was around this time is when she was able to eliminate this disorder. Remember that Chiron can be associated with wounds, sometimes physical. Gemini is associated with speech or communication, and Chiron again could be about our disorders. The first house is the early childhood. Now, some may think at the age of 6 that may not be the early childhood, but no matter how you look at it, this transit seems accurate because if you look at the fact that she had, when she first had this, when she was born, I would say presumably at birth, she had this disorder, and of course that time of life is associated with the early childhood, and South Node is about what we're going away from. So I believe she was able to get away from this disorder around that time. So, and another thing too is when you're talking about transits involving the South Node hitting a point in one's chart. Now, sometimes it may exacerbate that energy that it's hitting, or it could manifest in things detrimental connected with that energy. Now, we're talking about Chiron, so this could exacerbate in some cases, maybe some, I would say, existing wounds or ones of, it could be ones of the past or some suffering that one may have endured, and also to things that were detrimental connected with one's, it might be things that are just associated with Chiron at this time. It might be things that are detrimental connected with Chiron may occur at this time. So let's say, for example, um, somebody has their natal Chiron and Aries in their fourth house in their natal chart. Now, it might exacerbate some kind of suffering through some kind of domestic violence and volatility. If somebody has this saint in Scorpio in their 12th house in their natal chart, it might be dealing with some, it could be some stalker that they can't quite, identify. Remember, the 12th house is hidden adversaries, but another thing too is keep in mind the 12th house also corresponds with mental illness. It could be an obsessive compulsive disorder somebody may be dealing with that might be exacerbated at this time. And the things I just described to you, of course, how one is able to deal with them and whether it manifests more positively or negatively, a lot of that could be predicated and dependent on aspects that it makes to the other points in one's chart. If it makes, say, for example, a sextile or trine to make a Jupiter, these things may go more auspiciously. And if it's like an adverse aspect to one's natal Saturn, then these things might be more difficult and require more laborious effort to maybe accomplish, even if it's something good, such as trying to gain away from some kind of suffering or emotional or physical wounds that one may have been enduring at this time of the transit. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying, stay on.